G'day, I'm Mark Latham, and here at Rebel Australia we often take some flack. Flack from the media for getting out there on the streets of Australia, Western Sydney in particular, and telling the truth about things like multiculturalism, about ethnic ghettos, about the problems of people not learning the national language of English. Now in April I got out to Fairfield. It's said to be the most multicultural part of Australia. I got out there and spoke to people in the main street of Fairfield, or I tried to speak to them. 90% couldn't speak English. And I reported this, the problem of ethnic ghettos forming, people not learning English, unemployment, high levels of welfare dependency, who put all these disadvantaged people in a disadvantaged place, and the consequences are horrific. One of the local newspapers was quoting the so-called community leaders there, saying they were ashamed and disgusted with my comments. Have a look at this, ashamed and disgusted. Other community leaders there, Assyrians, were telling me I couldn't go into Fairfield without their permission. They were saying I was lucky I didn't get bashed. Well, they can go and get stuffed. I've got the right to visit these places and report to you directly about what's going on the streets of Western Sydney, what's happening on the streets of Australia. That's what we do here at Mark Latham's Outsiders, cut out the middleman, give you the information direct from the streets. Now, I reported on the problem. Here's my account. Speak to Mark Latham's Outsiders. What do you think of Cabramatta?
I am not speaking English.
Nothing at all?
No.
No English at all?
No,
okay, thank you.
I do know a lot of English.
You don't speak English at all, really? Think of
no,
Cabramatta?
No English, no.
No? No
No
English at all?
English.
Think of Cabramatta?
Syrian.
Syrian, okay.
Yeah.
What do you think of Syria?
Lebanon.
Lebanon. What do you think of Lebanon?
No.
Okay, no English. Okay, thank you. Well, the news from the streets of Fairfield is pretty disappointing. 90% of the people said they couldn't talk to me because they haven't got English. Now, Chris Bowen here is the Member of Parliament. He knows the story. He's been an immigration minister in the Rudd and Gillard governments, and it's quite disgraceful that 90% of the people are saying they've got no English. How can we have a proper, cohesive, cooperative, multicultural community if people don't even speak the basic language of the nation? No English? No English? So it's pretty clear there, it was hard to find anyone in Fairfield who could speak English. You've got a severe problem. People can't speak English. They form into the ghettos. They just hang out with themselves. They don't mix into the broader community. Less likely to get a job, more likely to be on welfare. Well, the local Member of Parliament, Chris Bowen, he's a bit of a high flyer in the Labor Party, but I'll tell you what, he's as weak as water. He won't stand up to the problems in his own electorate. He won't say to the Assyrians and the Iraqis and the Arabic community, hey, we've got a problem here, you've got to learn English, you've got to get off your backside and get a job, you've got to integrate into the Australian community. Bowen lives in fear of these ethnic groups. It's Frankenstein's monster. They've become so big and powerful with their voting capacity that a weakling like Bowen won't stand up to them. He absurdly got out there trying to defend the indefensible in his own electorate. Here was his powder puff video.
Mark Latham's been coming into Fairfield City lately saying that multiculturalism doesn't work. Now, I wasn't going to respond to Mark Latham. What he's after is attention. But I don't care what he says about me. I care what he says about my community. People who've come to Australia for years now have put up with people like Mark Latham criticising them for not speaking English. The Greeks, the Italians, the Polish, the Chinese, Vietnamese. They learn English, they worked hard, and they make a great contribution to Australia. The fact of the matter is, Australia has been built in multiculturalism, one of the most successful multicultural countries in the world. And right here in Fairfield, we live it and breathe it every day. And the people here don't need Mark Latham telling them what to think.
So Chris Bowen is deluding himself. He's just trying to butter up to these ethnic groups because he's not strong enough to stand up to the obvious problems of social injustice and disadvantage and welfare dependency in his own electorate. And most importantly, you can't have successful multiculturalism unless people are learning the language of the nation, they're learning English. Now, of course, who would have thought I would get verification, I'd get credit on my position, I'd be proven to be right by the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation in Australia, is all full of lefties, But they've put out a report. It's impossible to avoid the truth in Fairfield. Even the ABC is acknowledging the problem with lack of English language skills, with unemployment, with welfare dependency, and with these ethnic groups, refugees who just cluster together. They've got their own signage, radio stations, language they use among themselves. They don't get out there and mix and integrate into the broader community. This is what the ABC showed just last week.
This is one of the main streets in Fairfield, a suburb in Sydney southwest with more than 200,000 residents. It's one of the most multicultural areas in Australia.
My name is Rahim.
from in Iraq.
I'm Helen. I'm from Iraq.
My name is Tony Fares from Syria.
Since fleeing the war in Syria 2 years ago, Tony Fares has relied on his caseworker Murshid Aimer for help. Like many refugees, he struggles with English.
It's very difficult to stand in front of someone and you want to speak, but you can't speak.
It took a year for Tony to find a job. For others, it takes even longer.
The refugees feel that, there is a lack of understanding of their employment needs, barriers that prevent them from accessing the Australian job market.
There's a lot of people here that's Syrian and Iraqi, and all of the immigrants that come, they're all from Iraq as well. So when they come here, they can communicate with each other fine.
If you miss something in your country, you can find it here.
So there's the truth of it. Chris Bowen, you're blowing wind out of your backside. You're telling lies about what's happening in Fairfield. You say it's all a rosy picture, one big successful multiculturalism story. That's absolute BS. Absolute BS to the Australian people. Chris Bowen is the shadow treasurer. They say possibly a future leader of the Labor Party. God help Australia if that ever happens, because he can't even look after his own electorate with truth and decency and problem solving. The reality, we've got to make sure that these ethnic groups don't cluster together into ethnic ghettos. They've got to integrate, they've got to be dispersed across the geographic areas out there, mixing into the suburbs, and most importantly, they've got to learn English, a basic requirement. And the rule should be, if they don't learn English within 12 months, cut them off the welfare rolls. Okay, 12 months is a fair, decent period of time in which to learn the national language. If they don't do that, off the roll. And I'll tell you what, that'd smarten up a lot of them. They'll be learning English faster than William Shakespeare and Charles Dickens. I give you that guarantee. I'm Mark Latham for Rebel Australia. And if you like that video, please share it on all your social media and with your friends. Go to marklathamsoutsiders.com to join up for all our Rebel Australia activities. Come on board.